Archaeologists have discovered a huge ancient city hidden underground in Mexico.
Deep in the Petén Basin, a team breached a door that had been shut for 12 millennia. Behind it lay a room of obsidian glass and remains with elongated skulls that were not shaped by bandages. These people were born this way. Their DNA contains a sequence called X473, and it is acting like a biological hard drive. Basically, we just found an archive of the universe hidden inside human cells. The truth is much darker than the history books ever dared to tell. What if the ancient Maya were actually protecting a secret left behind by something else? Buried secrets under the stone. For a long time, the Maya were seen as a mystery that vanished into the trees, leaving only stone temples behind. But now, a new discovery is showing that the truth is way more intense. Deep in the Petén Basin of northern Guatemala, researchers were using special radar to look through the thick forest floor. This area is so wild and dense that most of it has never been explored by modern feet. While scanning near the giant ruins of El Mirador, the team saw a shape on their screens that made their hearts stop. Nature usually builds in messy, uneven ways, but 40 feet below the foundation of a collapsed temple, there was a perfect circle. So, here's the deal. The team thought they had found a simple cave, or maybe a water hole, but as they dug through the limestone, they hit a layer of stone that felt different. These blocks were cut with a precision that should have been impossible for people with stone tools. Even stranger, they were held together by a black glue that was tougher than the cement we use to build skyscrapers today. After days of heavy work, they found a single massive slab acting as a door. It was covered in carvings that did not look Mayan at all. Some of the shapes looked like they came from a time before the Olmecs, while others looked like nothing ever seen on Earth. When the team finally pried the door open, a rush of cold, compressed air blew out into the humid jungle. It felt like opening a freezer that had been shut for thousands of years. Inside was a room about 23 feet across. The walls were not made of mud or brick. They were coated in a thick black glass that looked like obsidian. But it did not act like glass. When the researchers shone their lights on the walls, the black surface just swallowed the beams. It did not reflect anything. It was like standing in a room made of shadows. In the center of this dark space, 3 people were sitting cross-legged on stone pedestals. They were covered in jade and shiny metal discs, but it was their bodies that truly confused the scientists. The site was perfectly clean. In a jungle where everything rots in days, these remains looked like they were placed there yesterday. The skulls of these individuals were very long and thin. Now, we know the Maya used to wrap heads to change their shape, but these bones were thick and even, suggesting they were born that way. When the team tested the fibers in the room, the results were a total shock. The room and the people inside it were 12,400 years old. That means they were sitting there thousands of years before the Maya ever existed. They were from a time before history even started. This key detail is what starts to unravel a secret that is much darker than we ever imagined. Scientists were confused about how such a high-tech room could exist so far back in time. The black glass walls seemed to keep the room at a steady, cool temperature, protecting the remains from the heat of the forest. The metal discs found around the bodies were not just gold or copper. They were made of strange mixes of metal that don't occur naturally in that part of the world. For starters, hands down, this is the most out-of-place discovery in the history of the Americas. The team felt like they were stepping into a time capsule that was never meant to be opened by us. As the researchers moved the remains to a lab, the mystery only grew. The air inside the chamber had a higher amount of oxygen than the air we breathe today. This suggests that whoever built this room knew how to seal it so perfectly that the atmosphere stayed the same for over 12 millennia. Every inch of the room felt like it was designed with a purpose that goes beyond just being a grave. It felt like a storage unit for something precious. Impossible patterns in the DNA. Things get even crazier once the scientists started looking at the genes of these ancient people. At first, the tests seemed normal. The DNA showed they were related to the people who first lived in the Americas. But then, the high-tech machines started to glitch. Large parts of their genetic code would not match with any human data in the world. The scientists thought the samples were dirty, so they cleaned them and tried again. The result was exactly the same. They found a repeating pattern in what scientists used to call junk DNA. This part of our code is usually a mess, but in these three people, it was a perfect mathematical sequence. It was not a random change or a mistake. It was a message. When they mapped out the pattern, they realized it followed the Fibonacci sequence perfectly. This is a math pattern found in sunflowers and seashells, but it does not just show up in DNA by accident. It looked like someone had written a code into the very building blocks of these people. They named this sequence X473. It was part human, but part something else entirely. It looked synthetic, as if it was put there on purpose by a master programmer. But the real shock came when they hit the DNA with ultraviolet light. The samples started to glow with a soft blue color. This is something you see in glowing fish or jellyfish, in the deep ocean but never in human bones. The glow was coming from the sequence itself. While this was happening, the people back at the dig site were looking closer at the door of the room. They saw that the spiral shapes on the stone door perfectly matched the shapes of the DNA sequences under the microscope. Basically, the door was a map for the blood. A senior scientist suggested a theory that was so wild the government almost shut the project down. He thought the DNA was not just biology. It was a hard drive. He believed these people were living books, carrying huge amounts of data in their cells. When they turned the DNA patterns into computer code, they found constant numbers that match the path of the planet Venus. This means these people were carrying the secrets of the stars inside their bodies. They were an archive of the universe, built to last forever. This realization changed everything. If the DNA was a storage device, then who put the information there? The information was not about how to grow a hand or an eye. It was about math, stars, and time. The team realized that the three people in the room were not just leaders or priests. They were the archive itself. They were chosen to carry this code through time, protected by the black glass and the limestone. The complexity of the code was way beyond what any ancient group should have known. It used a base 8 math system that is very efficient for storing data. The geneticists were staring at a level of engineering that we are only just starting to understand today. The fact that it survived for over 12,000 years is a miracle of science. But the most unsettling part was not the code itself. It was the fact that the code seemed to be waiting for something to trigger it. Guardians of the ancient flame. What most people don't realize is that this ancient bloodline did not die out 12,000 years ago. The scientists decided to do a massive search through modern DNA databases to see if sequence X473 was still around. They thought it was a long shot, but the computer found a match. The sequence was dormant, meaning it was sleeping, but it was still there. It showed up in a group of people living in small, lonely villages high in the mountains of the Yucatan. A team was sent to meet these people right away. These communities live in very tough spots, far away from big cities and modern technology. They have kept their old ways for hundreds of years. When the anthropologists talked to the village elders, they heard stories that gave them chills. The elders said they were the guardians of the old blood. Their families had rules for thousands of years about only marrying people within their group. They said this was not to be mean to outsiders, but to keep a balance. They did not know about DNA, but they knew they were protecting something special in their bodies. The new tests showed that these villagers still carry traces of that glowing DNA. It gives them a very strong immune system and helps their bodies heal much faster than normal. Some of the elders even had a memory for history and stars that was almost impossible. When they were shown pictures of the spiral shapes from the buried glass room, they recognized them instantly. They called the shapes the breath of the sky. This was not just a story to them. It was a memory that had stayed in their blood for hundreds of generations. These people were unknowingly keeping a genetic archive safe. They were the living descendants of the 3 people found in the Petén Basin. The sequence had stayed hidden in their cells for 12 millennia, passing from parent to child like a secret message. But the mystery got even deeper. Scientists found tiny pieces of this same DNA in people as far away as the South Pacific and the Arctic. It did not look like it evolved naturally. It looked like it was inserted into different groups of humans all over the planet at the same time. The team started to wonder if these different groups were all part of the same global system. If there were guardians in the Yucatan, were there others in the mountains of Peru or the islands of the sea? The oral traditions in these places often spoke of star people or teachers who came from the sky. The genetic evidence was starting to back up these old myths. It seemed like a massive, intentional project had been carried out on the human race a long time ago. The villagers themselves were very calm about the discovery. They told the researchers that the blood would wake up when the sky changed. They spoke about cycles of time and the importance of being ready. For the scientists, this was a huge breakthrough, but for the guardians, it was just the truth they had always known. They were waiting for a day when the old blood would be needed again. This connection between the distant past and the living present was the bridge the researchers needed to find the next piece of the puzzle. Pulse of the hidden beacon. While the doctors were looking at blood, the team in the jungle found something else that was even bigger. Just a few miles away from the glass room, they found a second anomaly under the trees. It was a massive, perfect ring hidden under layers of ash and old rock. It was 300 feet wide and made of a metal mix that should not exist. When they took samples, they found titanium, vanadium, and iridium. To melt these metals together, you need heat over 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. No ancient group had a furnace that could do that. This was not a temple or a tomb. It was a piece of very advanced technology. But the scariest part was that the machine was still working. The sensors showed that the metal ring was giving off a very low hum. Every 11 minutes, a tiny pulse of energy would ripple out from the ring. It was steady, like a clock. The team was terrified. They were standing on top of a 300-foot machine that had been running for 12,000 years without anyone knowing. They decided to turn the energy pulse into numbers to see if there was a pattern. When they did, they nearly fell over. The pulse from the metal ring matched the mathematical code of sequence X473 perfectly. The machine and the DNA were talking to each other. They were 2 parts of the same system, vibrating at the same frequency. The massive ring in the dirt was a beacon, and the people with the special DNA were the receivers. This is where the theories get very dark. Some researchers think the machine was not just talking to the DNA, but powering it. Others think the people might be the battery for the machine, a living network of human cells designed to keep the ancient technology on standby. But the most terrifying idea is that the ring is a remote control. It might be sending instructions to the DNA of the living guardians, telling it to change or wake up. This is when they realized the glass room was just a small part of a much bigger, much more dangerous plan. The metallic ring was buried so deep that it was clear it was meant to stay hidden for a long time. The soil around it had turned to glass from the intense heat of its construction. The scientists struggled to understand how such a massive structure could be built without leaving a trace on the surface. It was as if it had been dropped there from above and then covered up. The electromagnetic field around the ring was so strong it made the researchers' equipment stop working if they got too close. The hum of the machine was felt more than it was heard. It was a deep vibration that seemed to rattle the bones of anyone standing near it. The researchers began to feel a sense of dread as they realized the scale of the technology. This was not a primitive tool. This was a cosmic instrument. The fact that it was synchronized with human DNA meant that whoever built it had an intimate understanding of both physics and biology. They were looking at a masterwork of engineering that made modern satellites look like toys, awakening of the silent system. The final piece of the structural puzzle did not emerge from a digital scan or a satellite feed, but from a singular, cold object. a jade tablet recovered from the depths of the original glass room. For months, the artifact remained an enigma, its surface covered in microscopic, non-linear etchings that defied standard Mayan epigraphy. It was only when the researchers applied polarized light filters that the carvings revealed their true nature. They were not merely artistic representations, they were a high-fidelity astrometric map. However, the stars were not where they belonged. By running the data through retrograde orbital simulations, the team realized the tablet depicted the celestial canopy exactly 12,000 years ago. This specific chronological anchor is more than a historical footnote. It is a timestamp for the end of an era. This was the epoch of the Younger Dryas, a period of sudden, cataclysmic climate inversion. Whether triggered by a fragmented comet impact or a massive coronal mass ejection from a destabilized sun, the result was a global reset. The Earth was plunged into a chaotic feedback loop of fire and ice, a literal extinction-level event that decimated megafauna and erased entire human lineages. In this context, the Jade Tablet serves as a witness statement to the apocalypse. The map's primary focus was the Pleiades star cluster, a focal point of Maya cosmology, but it contained an anomaly. A subtle, spiraling path branched off from the cluster, terminating at a specific coordinates within the Taurus constellation. The tablet referred to this void as the Bakabchan, or Sky River. As the researchers cross-referenced the gravitational data with the site's electromagnetic resonance, the terrifying reality set in. The Sky River was not a metaphorical path to the afterlife, but a localized Einstein-Rosen bridge. It was a stable wormhole, a corridor through the fabric of space-time connecting our sequestered solar system to a distant, perhaps older, sector of the galaxy. According to the translated glyphs, the Bakab-chan, the Sky People, utilized this corridor when the Earth's biosphere began to collapse. Their arrival was not a rescue mission in the traditional sense. They did not come to stop the fires or the floods. Instead, they arrived as cosmic archivists. They viewed the human species not as a population to be saved, but as a biological database worth preserving. They were salvaging a part of the human story before the window of opportunity closed. They descended into a world of total entropy, where the sky was choked with ash and the oceans were rising. Amidst this carnage, they constructed the glass archives and the massive inert metal beacons to serve as a decentralized backup system for human civilization. But their most profound intervention was not in stone or glass. It was in the marrow. They performed a massive, targeted edit of the survivors' genomes, inserting a latent biological subroutine known as Sequence X473. This sequence was never intended to be functional during the primitive stages of our development. It was an epigenetic alarm clock, a dormant genetic trigger designed to remain quiet for millennia. To ensure the survival of the hardware, the technological ruins scattered across the globe, they cultivated specific bloodlines to act as perpetual caretakers. For 12,000 years, this system has been humming on low power, a silent sentinel buried beneath the silt and jungle growth, waiting for a specific astronomical resonance to wake it up. The tablet concludes with a chilling warning. The blood of the Guardians will ignite when the Sky River opens once more. The implications of this discovery are staggering. If Sequence X473 is a biological key, what happens to the human psyche when the code fully initializes? Are the modern descendants of these bloodlines about to undergo a forced metamorphosis? Furthermore, the question of the Sky People's current status remains the most haunting variable. Did they perish in the intervening eons, leaving behind a legacy of dead technology, or are they waiting on the other side of the Taurus corridor, watching the clock? The current data suggests the latter. As the researchers monitored the hum emanating from the metallic rings at the site, they noticed the pulse width was narrowing, becoming more coherent and rhythmic. It is a countdown. The stars are now shifting into the exact configuration recorded on the Jade Tablet 12,000 years ago. The cycle is closing. We are beginning to understand that the Maya were not merely an ancient civilization obsessed with time. They were the unwitting custodians of a galactic schedule that is finally reaching zero. We are forced to confront the unsettling possibility that humanity is a backup, a redundancy drive for a civilization that may no longer resemble us. Our history, our struggles, and our triumphs are perhaps only secondary to the data we carry in our cells. We are the vessels for a legacy that spans light years, and the Sky River is more than a path. It is a door that is currently unlatching. If the genetic guardians are the key, then the massive metallic ring discovered beneath the jungle floor is the lock. As the pulse from the site grows stronger, vibrating through the very ground, the researchers realize that the hum is no longer just a sound. It is a signal. The countdown is not a theoretical exercise. It is a physical process manifesting in the real world. The silence of the Petén jungle now feels heavy, pregnant with the weight of an impending revelation. Every ancient ceiba tree and weathered limestone block seems to be a component of a vast planetary machine that is finally drawing its first breath in 12 millennia. The team left the site with the profound realization that the world is not the stable, isolated sphere we believed it to be. We are part of a much larger, much darker cosmic architecture. The secrets of the Maya were never about the past. They were a roadmap for a future that has just arrived. As the stars align and the Sky River begins to shimmer in the infrared spectrum, the truth becomes unavoidable. The blood remembers the instructions that the mind has long since forgotten. The archive is being accessed, the fractured veil and the awakening code. The big metal ring started to shake and glow. It was like it was talking to something hidden deep inside the bodies of the people standing near it. Deep in the green jungles of Guatemala, a team of scientists found something that changed everything they knew. They didn't just find one old room or one weird machine. They found a giant web of old buildings hidden under the trees. These buildings were all humming with the same beat. It was a rhythm that matched a secret code they called the X473 sequence. Using special lasers that can see through thick plants, the team looked at the ground from the sky. In the year 2025, they found a massive city that was almost 3,000 years old. It was full of pyramids, holy places, and water paths that connected everything together. People used to think these places were all alone, but they weren't. They were part of a giant plan. 3 of these spots, Los Abuelos, Petnal, and Cambrel, formed a perfect triangle. This triangle matched a star map found on an old green stone tablet. These weren't just places to pray. They were like giant radio towers sending signals deep into the earth. The team used a special radar that looks under the dirt. They found hidden tunnels under the pyramids. These tunnels led to secret rooms. In one room, they found pieces of shiny crystals. When the big metal ring pulsed with energy, these crystals started to hum. The crystals were made of a rock called quartz, mixed with a rare metal called iridium. Iridium isn't usually found on Earth. It mostly comes from space rocks or meteors. This metal is the same stuff found from when the dinosaurs died out. It means these buildings might have been built after a giant disaster from space hit the Earth thousands of years ago. It was like the whole planet had a giant brain and nervous system. The metal rings were the brain cells, and the human DNA was the spark that made it work. The scientists started looking at other places in Mexico and Guatemala. They found huge tunnels lined with metal. The walls had spiral shapes carved into them. At first, people thought these were for water, but they were actually for moving energy. The dirt in the tunnels had a metal called vanadium in it. To put that metal there, you would need heat as hot as the sun. No one a long time ago had tools that hot. It looked like someone from the stars brought the technology here. The mystery of the DNA got even weirder. In the lab, the scientists looked at the X473 code again. They compared it to the bones of people who lived thousands of years ago. They found the code in the skeletons found inside the pyramids. One old altar showed drawings of tall people with very long heads. These people were giving blood to gods from the stars. These long heads weren't just for show. The DNA from these bones showed that their brains were actually 30% bigger than ours. The X473 code made their brains work faster. It gave them perfect memories and let them understand the stars better than anyone else. That is why the Maya people could predict eclipses and star movements so perfectly. The stars were literally inside their blood. The code in their bodies followed a special math rule called the golden ratio. You see this math in how flowers grow or how shells are shaped. But here, It was used like a computer language. It was a way to pack a massive amount of information into a tiny space. This code could even predict how galaxies move and how black holes crash into each other. It was like a giant library of the universe hidden inside a person. Maybe the sky people put it there so we would never forget the truth, even if the world ended. The team started seeing this same pattern all over the world. Old stories in the mountains told of star teachers who came during giant floods. These teachers put their own spirit into the blood of the local people. In Peru, people also found skeletons with long heads that didn't match normal human history. It was a worldwide plan to save information inside human beings. It was like a backup drive for the history of the universe. Some people started to get scared. They saw carvings on the old stones that looked just like computer parts. The Maya weren't just farmers. They built giant stone highways that lined up with the sun. These roads moved energy across the land to wake up the secret DNA. In a place called Tikal, the team found a third machine. It was a giant black ball made of glass and metal. It was so powerful that it messed up satellites and planes. When the scientists got close, their hearts started beating in time with the machine. One of the workers, who came from an old Maya family, started having visions. He saw ships coming down from the sky in fire. The machine was checking their blood to see if they were the guardians it was waiting for. The green stone tablet had a map of a group of stars called the Pleiades. Modern science shows that those stars might have wormholes, which are like shortcuts through space. The math in the DNA code matched the math of these space shortcuts perfectly. If the sky people traveled through these holes, they left the machines as anchors and the DNA as the key to the door. If our DNA is actually a galactic hard drive, who has the password to open it? What do you think the sky people left for us to find? Like and subscribe.